Why you will never be enough for your mother. Not good enough. That's a whole subject on its own. Feeling like you're not good enough for your mother. That's a whole topic on its own. But what I'm talking about here is you being enough for her. What do I mean? I have been everything to my mother. And I don't care whether she acknowledges that or admits that because she never will. Because she can never admit the truth or give praise or acknowledgement where it's due. She can never do that. But I once listened to an episode from To My Sisters. It's a podcast and a YouTube channel. It's called To My Sisters. And this lady was talking about having mommy issues, which is something that I've only realized now that I actually have some serious mommy issues. And one of the things that she said is that when you are raised by a single parent, the child who is mature, the child who is strong enough and there for the mother, ends up being a quote unquote husband. I know that seems really twisted, but it really made a lot of sense. I have felt like I have been my mother's partner, my mother's mother, my mother's friend, my mother's therapist, and yet my mother was never anything to me. Not even just a mother, okay? Because that's literally all I needed her to just be a mother. But I have felt like my mother has never been a mother to me, has never been a support system to me, has never been a pillar of strength for me. While me, as a child, I was giving so much of myself to my mother just to make her feel good, just to make sure she's happy, she's not worried. I suppressed my feelings, I suppressed my pain, I suppressed anything that I felt in order to make my mother okay. And I do mention the fact that she is a single mother, a single parent, mainly because I do think it does really tie into the fact that I felt like I always had to be there for my mother. Because in as much as, yes, it is not an easy thing to be a single mother, I can only imagine. But at the same time, I feel like my mother played that card very hard. In very subtle ways, though, where, there was always the mention of that, oh, I'm just like alone and I have to do everything by myself. So, in a way, she kind of conditioned us as her children to feel for her, to always have that in mind that, oh, my mother is a single mother, she's doing this by herself. She programmed us to always have that in mind. Never mind the fact that it was obvious. I mean, obviously we can clearly see as your kids that there isn't a man around, there isn't a father around this house, but it was the overemphasis on that fact that I am doing this alone. I'm a single mother. It is so hard. And I'm not denying those things. Those are facts. She is a single mother. It was hard at times. It is challenging to do this on your own, raising your own kids by yourself. I admit that. It is a fact. But it is the way she hammered that into us. She pushed that agenda and that fact, because it's a fact, right? She pushed it so much onto us so that we always felt for her. And it really landed hard with me because I'm the empath. I'm the sensitive one, but not in the way that she always declares it, because my mother declares that I'm sensitive only because she doesn't want to admit when she has hurt me. But I am more in tune with my feelings. I am more susceptible to feeling other people's pain. I do tend to fall. I don't even want to say fall for the trap, but I do tend to feel other people's feelings very intensely. I do tend to feel for other people and want to help and want to overhelp, by the way. And so it really landed with me, especially me, out of all her children, it really landed with me that, oh, my mother's a single mother. Things are hard, so I have to be there for her. In my being there for her, I suppressed her. I suppressed my feelings, and I guess I also suppressed the need for my mother to be there for me. I guess I didn't express it as much that hey, I also need you to be here for me. But even if I had expressed that, now because I realize how emotionally unhealthy and distant and void my mother is, it would have literally hit deaf ears. Even if I did express that, hey, mom, I need you to be there for me. I need your emotional support. I need you emotionally. I need you. She still wouldn't have heard it. Instead, she would have had, in her mind, I would have been saying, oh, you're a bad parent. Because that's all that my mother ever hears. Whenever I tell her something that she has done or said that I don't like, or maybe even bring up something from my childhood that maybe I didn't like, in her ears, all she hears is an insult, an attack. She can never just be rational. She can never be reasonable. She can never take criticism or confrontation as it is and then think about it, process it, and like really listen. Like really, really listen. She just cannot do that. I was listening to another episode from Survive. I think it's called Heal, Survive, Thrive. Yes, that's the podcast by Stephanie Lynn. And she once said something so powerful. She said, you cannot out love someone's self hatred. You cannot outlove someone's self hatred. And that has really stuck with me because the reason I'm saying that I will never be enough for my mother, like no matter how much I'm there for her, no matter I am quote unquote her husband, quote unquote her mother, quote unquote her friend or her therapist or everything that she needs, because she needs, like for someone who doesn't give of herself emotionally, my mother, it is so crazy how much of an emotional supply she needs from other people. Like, shouldn't you be willing to give as much as you want? Like, she's really emotionally unavailable. She cannot validate other people. She cannot truly be there for other people. But goodness, she demands a lot of that. She needs a lot of that. And I think not only did I get exhausted by the emotional abuse, being taken advantage of because I was the good daughter. I was always trying to be there for my mother, and because she lacks emotional intelligence, and because she has her own wounds that she has never dealt with, no matter how good I was to my mother, it didn't stop her from emotionally abusing me, emotionally and psychologically abusing me. And I think for the longest time I have thought of abuse as just mainly direct abuse. For example, physical abuse or verbal abuse, where someone is calling you ugly or stupid or a failure. Whereas with my mother, it is not direct abuse. It is indirect abuse. It is emotional and psychological abuse. It is abuse that takes time to register that this is actually abuse. Because I am in my late 20s and it's only now that it is registering that, hey, the way that they would talk to me, my mother and my sister, it was actually abusive. They might have not directly said, you are a failure, but good Lord, they had a way of phrasing it that made me feel like a failure. They had a way about them that made me feel like I'm a failure, that made me feel sometimes like I'm ugly, that made me feel like sometimes I'm stupid, that made me feel small. So, in as much as it was never a direct word like stupid, ugly, or failure, but they made me feel like that. And in my previous episode, I said that I think that my mother is the most creative person when it comes to making you feel small, because it's not like it's very direct. It's not something that you can really pinpoint, but she will phrase it in a way that makes you feel small. Like I made the example of like when you're feeling yourself and you're good and you're good to go and you're like, oh, I'm beautiful. And then she's like, is that how you going out? Or like, is that what you chose to wear? Like, it's those little things, it's those condescending, patronizing comments where in a way she can defend herself and say, I didn't say you're ugly. I was just asking if that's what you're wearing. You know what I mean? So in the way that she abuses you, it seems like it gives her a defense. What can I say? It gives her a point it leaves her in a position where she can defend herself because she didn't directly say you're ugly. But at the same time, the question actually implies that you are ugly. Anyway, so for me, the emotional abuse went on undetected, unnoticeable, not fully noticeable, because some of the statements or phrases they would say to me, they were hurtful, but I just didn't really pay that much attention because, I believed what my mother would say, that I'm your mother, I wouldn't want to hurt you. Like, to hell with that. Like, I don't care now where, like, you are saying, like, I'm your mother, why would I don't know, woman, but you have hurt me. Because anytime I would bring up to my mother something that she said or did, that didn't sit right with me, her stance would always be, but I'm your mother, why would I want to hurt you? And I believed it because, it seems reasonable. Like, yeah, you are my mother. Why would you want to hurt me? So I would end up justifying her behavior, justifying what she would say and saying, yeah, maybe she didn't mean it that way. I would reason in my mind and think, maybe she didn't mean it that way. Maybe I took it personally. Maybe I took it in the wrong way. Maybe I am the sensitive one, leading me to a place of exactly where she wants me, where I'm blaming myself. Then I flip it on myself and say, you know what? My mother's right. She is my mother. She gave birth to me. She raised me. She took me to school and did stuff for me. Like, why would she want to hurt me? But she did. She did hurt me. She did emotionally abuse me. And she is a narcissistic mother. She has a narcissistic personality disorder. And whether she knows it or can admit it or not, I don't care. I need to be able to admit it for my own safety, because if I keep being in denial about the fact that I'm emotionally abused or have been emotionally abused, if I keep on being in denial about the fact that my mother is narcissistic, my mother has toxic behaviors, my mother is emotionally unhealthy, if I keep denying the fact that there's dysfunctionality within this family, there's an unhealthy way of communicating, if I keep denying that, I'm the one who's going to keep on being hurt. And I cannot play that game anymore. I cannot be part of that anymore. I cannot be part of the toxicity, the dysfunctionality. I'm choosing to step back. I'm choosing to create and establish firm boundaries. So when Stephanie said, you cannot outlove someone from their own self-hatred, it made so much sense to me because I tried to be everything to my mother. Not only was she not really grateful for me being everything to her, she also abused me on top of that. So me trying to be enough for my mother, me trying to be everything for her, me trying to always make her happy, to always please her, it was never, ever, ever going to be enough. And I say this with the fullest of confidence because for years, up until my late 20s, actually up until just last year, because I think in as much as I did start to kind of change the way I was once I started going to varsity and only coming back home for holidays, but I was still pretty much a mommy pleaser, which made me actually a people pleaser. So nothing I could have ever done could satisfy the hole and the void and the need and the pain and the wounds that she has within herself. That is why she could never return the favor, if I could even put like that, to be kind and nice to me, to be as supportive as I was to her, to be my quote unquote therapist as I was to her, to be a mother, to just be a mother, to be nurturing, to be really mindful of how your child is doing, to pay attention, to ask questions. She could never be that because she needs so much of that. Like I believe my mother is blinded by her need for validation, by her, what's the word? By her overly neediness to be loved, to be validated, to be praised, because those things are not a problem. It is not a problem to need or want validation. It is not a problem to need or want love, attention, praise. Those are normal human emotions. Okay? And as I'm on this journey of healing, I'm learning that there is a healthy amount of these emotions, of these feelings, of these needs that you experience as a human being. There's a healthy amount of validation that you need from your partner, from your family, from friends. There's a healthy amount of that you need. And then there's an unhealthy amount where you desperately need people to validate you, where you feel like you can't really function unless someone has validated you, where you feel like your work doesn't mean anything unless someone validated you, where you feel like you don't look beautiful unless someone validates you. Then that's an unhealthy amount. And what my mother has is an excessive, that's the word, an excessive need for validation, for attention, for praises, all these things that boost her ego, not her confidence, because we all need a confidence booster every now and again. So, a confidence booster can come from a form of a healthy amount of validation, getting praises for something that you did good, even getting a compliment in terms of how you look. That can be a confidence booster. But an excessive need of that is where you feel like you're not beautiful unless someone says so. The excessive need for someone to always say that you are smart, you are beautiful, you are this and that. That's what my mother has. An excessive need of these things. And guess who was her supply? Me. Cause when I give of myself, I really give of myself. And I'm on this journey where I'm letting God teach me how to give of myself, teach me how to be a servant, teach me how to serve and not serve foolishly. In another episode, I mentioned how you can be a good person in a very foolish way. I don't want to be a good person. I want to be a good person, but I don't want to be a good person foolishly, to such a point where I am resentful and bitter and angry towards those that I'm good to. So I'm on this journey, I'm on this process of praying and allowing God to, Lord, let me be good wisely. Give me wisdom to be good, because what I was to my mother, because I thought I was trying to make her feel good about herself. And that was really one of the main things that drove me to like always just be there for my mother. I always tried to make her feel good about herself, because even as a child, I think I saw that my mother didn't quite feel good about herself, because of her own insecurities, her own unhealed wounds, and the reason that she needs this so much, that I also felt like even as a child, even though I wasn't really perceptive and even though I wasn't really that smart, but I could tell that my mother needs the validation. So I kept on giving it to her. The reason that she is stuck in this place where she needs this excessive amount of validation and praises and this and that, it's because she refuses to deal with the wounds that are within her. And I say this because anytime in this house where maybe me and my sister or me and my siblings or me, just me, I confront my mother about anything, she doesn't want to deal with it. And I think that's part of how she grew up, perhaps in a family that didn't address any issues, that really felt uncomfortable speaking about any issues. And I guess she got used to that habit. But it is the same habit that she has failed to work on for so long that has actually led me to be distant with my mother. I live with my mother, but emotionally I'm very distant with my mother. But for the longest time, I was actually very emotionally clingy to my mother. I was very clingy to my mother, to such a point that even if I thought that maybe there was like a man in my mother's life, I would be so jealous. I would be so enraged because I wanted to keep my mother to myself. Again, this goes back to when there's a single mother and she sees that there's a mature child, that child becomes quote unquote the husband. So what I was feeling, and oh, don't get this twisted. I know it sounds so twisted, but I was playing the role of a husband. Okay, let's not make it in a physical sense because, good Lord, there are so many twisted things in this world nowadays, like identity crisis and all that. But in a role kind of manner, the role that I was playing was of a husband to my mother because I was the shoulder to cry on. I was there to listen to her. If she had something to talk to, if she was upset, with one of my siblings, I was the one that she would talk to. Now, normally these things would be done by a husband, would be done by the father of the children. So I played that role of being, quote unquote, a husband to my mother, also a friend, also a mother to her, also this and that. And so even when I sensed that maybe my mother could be involved with someone, I really got enraged and I was angry because, like, I just wanted to keep my mother to myself. I was very emotionally clingy. I was very emotionally, in an unhealthy way, in a very unhealthy way, as I was emotionally attached to my mother. But now that I'm in this healing process, I have detached, I am detaching, I have distanced myself, I am distancing myself. And so now I can almost see her more clearly. Ooh, that word didn't, took some time to come out. But I'm now seeing her more clearly. It's like with any relationship, when you step out of that relationship or you get some distance or space from that relationship, you start to see things more clearly. Now that I'm emotionally detached from my mother, now that I'm emotionally distanced from my mother, I am now seeing her for who she really is, for how much hurt is in her that she actually hurts other people. Whether she's aware of it or not aware of it, it really doesn't matter. At this point, it doesn't matter because I think at first I also juggled with that. Like, I struggled to understand whether my mother intentionally would hurt me or whether she's not aware, whether it's like out of habit or from the pain. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether it's intentional or unintentional. Like, I always revert to this example. If you are caught in a crossfire, like someone was aiming a gun, trying to shoot somebody else, and then the bullet actually goes for you, it doesn't matter who they were aiming for. It doesn't matter whether they intentionally or unintentionally shot you. You know why it doesn't matter? Because you're shot. Because now you're on the ground and you're bleeding. Because you are the one who's wounded and hurting. Yeah, sure, the person can come later and say, hey, I didn't mean to hurt you. I'm sorry. Does it take away the pain? No. So if someone comes and say, oh, I didn't mean to shoot you, does that mean they didn't shoot me? No, brah. You still shot me. You still hurt me. I'm still in the hospital, lying with probably a bullet in my body because of you. You get what I mean? Like, I'm not saying it's like you shouldn't forgive the person who's like, hey, I didn't mean to hurt you. But what I'm trying to get across here is that whether you meant it or you didn't mean it, if something hurts somebody, it hurts them. So at this point, I'm not even at a point of trying to figure out whether my mother did it intentionally or whether she didn't mean to hurt me, because either way, she hurt me. I don't care if she meant to shoot me or not. Either way, the bullet is inside. So it really doesn't matter. I think the only thing that would matter is her acknowledging that, hey, I actually shot you. Even though I didn't mean it, but I shot you. But with my mother, she wouldn't even admit to shooting. Yo, this is twisted. Listen. So if my mother was the person like pointing the gun and was aiming at somebody else and then shot you and then came to you and was like, she wouldn't say, oh, hey, I was actually aiming for someone else. I'm sorry I shot you. No, she would be like, I didn't shoot you. I didn't even have a gun. That's my mother. Like, she would completely deny the whole thing. or try to explain how maybe like she would try to over explain it and be like, oh, the gun was just like, instead of just admitting like, hey, I shot you, it was intentional, but I'm sorry I caused you pain, I'm sorry that right now you're in this pain because of me. No, she will go every which way just to avoid taking responsibility for the fact that she shot you, for the fact that she hurt you, for the fact that she emotionally abused you. No, she will take any other route other than the route of acknowledging that she hurt you. And I'm at a point where I'm no longer even expecting that. I don't even know if I even want it because I've expected that for so long. And I think even just that, the expectation of my mother to own up to her own actions, the expectation for my mother to be a mother to me, for the expectation for my mother to be supportive, it has gone on for so long that I don't even have the energy to expect that anymore. I don't even know if I have the need for that anymore. It just feels a little too late, you know? I don't know how I would feel if my mother woke up one day and just really saw me and just really valued me and really just like loved me and supported me. I don't know. Maybe it would feel good. But at this point, I really don't trust her. I think I would still be in disbelief and in denial. And it would probably take some time for me to adjust to that because I wouldn't believe it. Because here's the thing with a narcissistic mother, sometimes they can be good for a short period of time, or they can be what you want them to be because they actually know. She knows that I need and crave, that I've needed and craved the validation. So when she feels like maybe she's losing me, she can be that. She can be validating and supportive for a little while, because it wouldn't be genuine. It would be just faking it just to keep me on her hook. So even if she woke up and she was completely supportive, she was completely emotionally there for me, I wouldn't believe it. I would really need to see it last for a very long time because I'm tired of her dangling her love, her affection, her compassion, her attention, her validation, her praises in front of my face. I'm tired. Like my mother has toyed with my emotions. Like her just dangling the fact that, oh, I can give you a compliment every now and again. Like just stop. Just like this is something you're naturally supposed to give to me. Okay? Like I think because now I'm old, I no longer really, and now that I'm healing actually, I no longer really feel entitled to that. I think as a child, because obviously as a child, you expect your mother to love you, to give you attention, to compliment you, to give you praises. So as a child, you do feel entitled, as you should, because you are a child. Like, mom, you gave birth to me. Can you just not give me love, your full attention, your full love, your complete love, instead of dangling it in my face and just acting like, ooh, you can get it or you cannot get it? Like, it's not a game. Just love me if you love me. Like, even hate me if you hate me, because I cannot stand the in between. I fully understand where God says he hates lukewarm Christians. Like, if you are cold, be cold. If you are hot, be hot. Like, I hate the fact that my mother was always in between, tiptoeing and backsliding and going forward. Like, ooh, I can love you, but then, I'm not going to really love you. Like, I can show you love sometimes, but sometimes I'm not going to show you love. It is the most annoying thing, so just stop it. I thank God that I'm at this place where I no longer feel the craving, which was so bad. Excuse me. The craving was so bad. The need for my mother to love me was so bad. But now that I am an adult and I'm in this healing journey, I no longer feel as entitled to my mother's validation because I'm a grown up. I gotta learn to do this thing by myself. Like I might not always be the one to validate myself. Like I trust that God will bring people in my life who will give me a healthy amount of validation every now and again. People who genuinely just love me and give me their attention. But at this point, because now I'm old, Okay, and I think that was one of the hardest things to hear from my counseling sessions when my counselor said that you no longer need your mother. And it wasn't meant to be a harsh way. It wasn't meant to be disrespectful to my mother, but it was a fact that eventually we grow up and what we used to get from our mother or what we expected to get, we end up having to do it for ourselves. So I'm ending up having to teach myself to love myself, to learn to love myself the way that I wish my mother would have loved me, to value myself the way that I wish my mother would have valued me, to praise myself, to validate myself the way that I wish my mother would have validated me and praised me and loved me and gave me attention. Now, this for me doesn't take away the fact that I still need people sometimes to do that for me. I am not all sufficient. I am not enough by myself, and that is not low self-esteem speaking. That is me realizing that I'm in this world and I cannot always be everything to myself. I cannot always be super strong. I cannot always be able to validate myself, compliment myself, praise myself. Sometimes you just really need other people to tell you these things. I mean, why is it so hard for us to get out of a rut or a bad day, if we are so able to be enough for ourselves? Like if you are enough for yourself, like anytime you are upset or had a bad day or someone made you angry, you should be able to just snap yourself out of it because hey, you are enough for yourself. So for me, I'm not on that mentality where I'm saying I'm enough for myself, but I am on a mentality where I'm learning to take care of myself, validate myself, love myself, but at the same time also make space, for other people to be there for me because I cannot always be everything to myself. And I definitely cannot, could not, and will never be everything to my mother. That was a very heavy burden for me to take on. That was a duty that I shouldn't have taken on, that my mother shouldn't have allowed me to take on. And no matter how much I gave of myself, she never got enough. I don't know what's the perfect example for this, but like she just never got enough. Ugh. Like I feel like there's an example of this that I could make, but it's not really coming to my mind. But she's just someone who, like, no matter how much you love her, it will never be enough. Like she will always need to be loved more. No matter how much attention you give her, she will always need more. No matter how much you praise her, she will always need more. It really becomes depleting. This is why I'm saying I'm learning to validate myself so that I don't end up needing excessive validation from other people because it is draining and exhausting to feel like you always have to, like be there for other people or like support this person. Like I'm all for us supporting one another. Like if we are friends, I'm going to be there for you. If you're my family, I should be there for you. You should be there for me. But if I feel like, good Lord, I have to drag you out of the mud every single time, and it feels like you keep slipping into the mud, no matter how much I try to drag you out, it's like, honestly, at this point, I think you love the mud because I keep dragging you out and saying, hey, you are better than this. You are better than the mud. You can be clean. But somehow, I always find you back in the mud. And I think it's just my mother's responsibility at this point, and it has been for a long time, for her to get herself out of the mud. Maybe then, if she can get herself out of that mud, maybe then she can actually commit to the change. Instead of me trying to be everything to my mother, I could never be enough. And so when Stephanie said you cannot outlove someone from their self-hatred, I got that. I was trying to outlove my mother from whatever she's hurting from. I was trying to outlove her from her own insecurities. I was trying to outlove her from her own pain and wounds. And I'm just not capable of that. I'm not. And I don't even know what to say to my mother because she is a Christian woman. I would say, hey, maybe Jesus will help her, but She has already accepted Jesus Christ as her Lord and Savior. This again goes back to free will. Jesus Christ will not override your will. This is why I'm saying, like, I feel like my mother just likes being in the mud. Once she can make that choice to say, you know what, I don't like being in this mud of self-pity, this mud of insecurities, this mud of unhealed wounds, this mud of excessive emotional demand. If she can get tired of that, trust you me, Jesus is ready and waiting for her to he's ready to pull her out. Ugh, that really got me because I've been also in a mud for a very long time. And once I just made the decision that I'm tired to be in this mud, listen, I didn't even have to pull myself out. Jesus just stretched his hand and he was like, now you're ready, let's go. Jesus is not going to override your will. He's not going to force you to change. He's not going to force you to heal. So if you're still holding on to the mud, like, that's your choice. But when you're ready, listen, you don't even have to crawl to him. He's right there waiting for you to be willing and ready.